In the late 1800s, workers in factories faced many hardships. Business owners wanted to keep profits as high as possible. For example, they cut costs by requiring workers to buy their own tools or bring coal. Road workers had to buy their own safety equipment. In a year, 30,000 were injured and 2,000 were killed of the workers who did not buy the safety gear. If a factory was too crowded, owners sent part of the work to be done by a smaller business that people called sweatshops. Sweatshops were places where workers worked for long hours with bad conditions and low wages. Often some of the workers were as young as 5 years old and worked alongside adults. The wages could barely pay for families, and if they missed one day, they could be in debt. Most of the families couldn't support themselves unless everyone in the family had a job.
Also in 1867, a woman named Mary Harris Jones lost her husband and 4 children to yellow fever. She didn't give up and made a dressmaking business that was burned down in the Chicago fire in 1871. Jones became a labor leader and was loved so much that they called her Mother Jones.
National organizations such as the Knights of Labor were created after the Civil War. The Union created these groups. The Knights of Labor were workers from all different types of trades. Most organizations did not accept women, but the Knights did. Later, they also allowed African Americans. In 1783, the United States went into an economic depression. In 4 years, millions of Americans took pay cuts and lost 1/5 of their job.
In 1877, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad declared wage cuts of 10% and the railroad workers declared strike. News spread of this strike and many people also went on strike as well. State militias had to battle these mobs and dozens of people were killed. This did not stop the pay cuts, but it showed how angry America was.
Next, they went on strike to the Union Pacific and the 2 other railroads. They won the strikes, and this gave the Knights nationwide attention. The labor movement was blamed on socialists and anarchists. Socialists believed in socialism. Anarchists wanted to abolish all government.
In Chicago in 1886, the McCormick Harvester Company locked out striking union members and hired strike breakers to replace them. They eventually fought with the police and a union member was killed. A protest was held at the Haymarket Square.
This meeting was being patrolled by the police and an unknown person threw a bomb. This killed 7 people and wounded 60. The police opened fire and killed several while wounding hundreds. This protest was called the Haymarket Affair.
In 1892, Andrew Carnegie reduced wages at his mills. The workers refused the cuts, and the company locked out union workers from the mills. They claimed they would hire non-union workers. The company hired 300 armed guards and locked out workers gathered weapons themselves. On July 6th, the battle condensed and 10 people were left dead. 4 months later, the strike was stopped. This was called the Homestead Act. Workers then later lost another dispute and multiple railroad companies went bankrupt.
The Pullman Palace Car Company cut workers' pay by 25%. Pullman didn't lower the rent and the workers were still charged to live in the company housing. The Pullman workers then went on strike and this spread throughout the entire railroad industry. The railroad workers refused to handle Pullman cars and this was called Eugene versus Debs. President Cleveland called federal troops to end the strike.
Procter & Gamble gave their employees an extra half day off the week. They weren't as cruel as the Pullman and Carnegie. These companies would also give part of its profits to the workers. The labor unions did not die in spite of the opposition. In 1886, a labor leader named Samuel Gompers founded a new organization called the American Federation of Labor. He was their president for 37 years. The AFL won shorter working hours and better pays. Around 1904, the organization had 1.7 million members. The labor unions helped change the way Americans work.